Good morning from the UK, everyone. I am here with Dan. Good morning to you, Dan.
Morning. You all right, Anya?
Yes, good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too on this not so sunny British Sunday morning, but that's what we love about it.
That's it. We are going to discuss something a little bit different today, but it is definitely in line with self-love. So we said we would discuss the benefits of nature and food today. And Dan and I are very passionate about this subject. We talk about it on a regular basis during the week.
I think we start a food channel, aren't we?
So, and you're reading a fabulous book on these subjects, and we are going to discuss how it is really important for self-love. The book is called Rewild Yourself, Becoming Nature by Corby. So I'll put the link down below so people can have a look if they're interested after our chat. So what have you discovered so far?
Well, it's funny you mention self-love, because that ties in really well with this kind of thing. We're talking about food and talking about nature, because you find that those sort of areas of life are often neglected. I think when you're feeling in a low state of mind, I think the first thing you do sometimes is go to the snacks or go to the burger place and fill yourself up with that quick fix of, you know, almost like what do you call it? You're almost self-soothing, but not looking in the right place to self-soothe, if you like. So it's interesting you saying that, really. But the book I've been reading, it's very interesting. It's talking about the benefits of eating, or being in nature, being around nature, and what nature gives to us, what it gives back to us, really, and how we've kind of lost that connection with the natural world, really, in the sense that we're living in houses, we're living in cities. We haven't got that immediate connection as much as we used to have, certainly with nature. Because if you look back at the old, in the tribal times, in the ancient times, people lived in nature, they lived around nature, they knew what trees were what leaves to pick, what mushrooms to eat, how to sustain themselves from the land, really. But they also gave back to the land as well, in the sense that they cultivated it, they didn't over exploit it, and they knew what to plant where. They would leave a field fallow for one season, so it would have a chance to get all the nutrients back in, and they would sort of have a cycle, like the agrarian cycle, I believe it's called. So they were very much in touch with nature, and they knew sort of how to work with it rather than exploit it. And certainly when you look around today and you look at supermarkets and you look at big sort of companies and that mass produce things, I think we've kind of lost that connection with nature, but at the same time we've also lost that connection with the benefits of nature as well.
Yeah, I think having watched that movie that you and I both watched this week called Reconnect, I'll put the link down below for those that want to watch it. It's the guy from London Real, Brian
Ray.
And he goes in to do an ayahuasca ceremony, and the plants, it's his realizations, inner experience that he has from this plant intelligence. So that was a really interesting thing of how nature interacted with him, and then what happened to him during the ceremony, what happened after. And, even the simple thing of, you and I spend a lot of time in nature. We like being alone. We like being around trees and grass and where it's quiet. And I think it's that exchange of us, we have an exchange between breathing in the oxygen that the trees give, and then the exchange of that, and it's good for the system, it's good for the blood, it's good for the energy, it has so many benefits, and just what it gives you in terms of the silence, the peace, it rejuvenates. It's like the phone being put on the dock. I find that it's a real experience that And like you said, in the city, we do need to make the effort to go into these places. I mean, I'm in London, you're a bit out of London, so you probably have a bit more access, but there's so many huge trees in London, big parks, lots of where the palaces are, there's lots of grounds, and you can go and be in these places. And
Victoria Park, isn't it, in London? We've got Victoria Park, is it? I think it is.
Which park?
Victoria Park, I think it's called,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, Victoria Park, Hyde Park. I mean, there's so many. I mean, today I'm going to the markets, and that's in a big park near a palace as well. And it's like going and getting nature and good food and organic food where you can, because what you put in, it has an effect, it has an effect on your body. And when it has an effect on your body, then it affects your mind. It's like the mind affects the body and the body affects the mind. So, you and I, often share our recipes. We share what we've got at the markets. We share all these wonderful, simple things. And I think there's something about going out and hunter gathering, our produce at these amazing little markets that is such a amazing, wonderful thing to do. And before I forget, Dan, I will also put the link to that Monopoly documentary, which I'm not going to explain what that is, because that's a whole huge thing that we're not going to discuss today. But for those of you that eat processed food and, you don't know the background, or you don't know who owns this, or you don't know where the money's going or the shareholders, this documentary was incredibly eye-opening for you and me. And wow, I mean, I couldn't sleep that night because it really affected me once I knew what I saw. And once I found out, it's huge.
Exactly the same.
So
it's connected.
Yeah. So interesting that we watched both of these things in 1 week, because one was about plant intelligence and the other one was about the total other side of the coin, the processed foods and all this other stuff. And watching those within the week, it showed you this totally different level of which direction do I want to go in, and how do I want to, as part of my self-love, take care of myself better. So you've read this amazing book. I'm going to hand it over to you to share what you've discovered and what's been of value to you.
Okay, so when you're talking about processed food, that was quite a big part of the book, actually, because they talked about something called quantum exchange. And what quantum exchange is basically saying that the intention when you're making the food, when you're preparing the food, what kind of intention is it made with? So with the mass-produced kind of processed food, often these are made by big companies, machine-produced, mass-produced. There's no kind of intention in there. There's no humanity in it, really. And what this book talks a lot about is you actually have an emotional exchange with the food that you're preparing, in the sense that you put your energy into that food when you're preparing it. And that is a really big aspect of how the food responds. So everything is conscious, in a sense, and plants that you put into the food are conscious, and the energy that's in that food is a conscious energy. So you're almost affecting that food by the way it's prepared. So if you're preparing that food in a factory with no kind of human interaction or no kind of human input into that food, it is going to be a very mass-produced kind of, and it's going to lack some kind of flavor perhaps, or some kind of sustenance. So the satisfaction that you get from that food is not going to be the same as some food that is prepared in, a loving environment by somebody from scratch, made from raw ingredients that have been, come straight from nature. And that energy and that intent of kind of that feeling, you transmit that feeling to the food that you're preparing. And I know this from doing, because I'm a Reiki practitioner, so I understand that the energy that you can actually transfer or do Reiki on food as well before you eat it. And what this does is, it's sort of, it puts positive energy and it puts good energy into the food, which you then ingest, and then obviously that energy into your body kind of thing. So this quantum exchange is very, very important, really. getting food direct from nature in its raw form is the ideal, is what we're
Yeah.
saying, is what Rachel says in her book. And if you get it directly from nature, then it has the intention and the purity of nature in it. So raw foods, forage foods are very, very good for you in the sense that they've just got that energy from the sun, the moon, the earth, in its rawest form, in its most natural form, without any kind of intervention, any kind of processing going on. And we
Yeah.
absorb that into our bodies, and we become that food. It is quite true what they say, you know, we are what we eat. And I think the more we eat these kind of foods, it does actually make us more connected with nature, because we are eating nature, if you like.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I remember hearing years ago, if it's not made by nature, don't eat it. And I remember thinking, you know, wow, that's really simple. But to put that into practice, and I know a lot of people are working, they have limited time, you know, so it does take a time, and it's putting that time and making this a priority. And I know, like years ago, I had terrible skin, like terrible, and for years. And I look back at my diet, you know, it was high sugar, high dairy, high wheat. And for me, you know, that's okay for some people, but that stuff's just not okay for me. And once I worked out what it was, it's like my skin just cleared up, and I've had really good skin since. And, you know, it really is like the face really reflects to you what you're putting inside, and it shows you how healthy somebody is, or they're not. And as well, drinking water and making that a priority, because we need it. And being someone who has a tendency for headaches, for me, water saves me from getting headaches. I need to be hydrated. It's one of my Achilles heels. So if I attend to that, then there's no issues. It's really important. So yeah, nature is such it's a relentlessly giving resource. Relentlessly, it gives constantly without looking for any reassurance or anything from us. That's what's so fantastic.
It really is. And it's almost like it's all because everything's connected, isn't it? So we are nature, but we are giving to nature as well by being in nature, because we're breathing the carbon dioxide to the trees, which the trees then use to make oxygen. So it's a two-way exchange, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think we have definitely lost that, and I think we've lost our connection with the land, our local land as well. I think certainly with, you know, foods that we fly in from Peru and all this kind of thing. I mean, like, you can get some avocados and you can look on the packet and it's come from Peru, and you think,
Yeah.
you know, certain things obviously you know you can't necessarily get locally, but apples from New Zealand. Rachel Corby talked in a book about buying apples from New Zealand when you've got a beautiful orchard down the road and selling them at the market for
if you're in Peru, eat Peru food. If you're in England, eat England food. It's eating what's in season. Like we've lost touch with what's in season. So I think that's when you can avoid buying stuff from other countries and really supporting your local growers, your organic producers, and all of that. It's supporting the little guy and not the big processed food companies. That just makes more sense to me, to eat what's in season.
But also, I think as well, when you're eating in season, if we go back to cycles in nature, if we're eating out of season, then essentially we are out of sync with the cycles around us, aren't we? I think Rachel Corby in a book talks about eating, like you were saying, eating in season, and that's how our sort of ancestors used to eat. They used to say, "Oh, well, it's apple season now, so we're going to eat loads and loads of apples, and by the end of autumn we're going to be sick of apples, so we'll move on to Swedes because that's what's in season." In the winter, and I think that's like when you do look at the food that's available different times of the seasons, different seasons, there are different foods that are available. That, like in summer, it's, you know, it's salads and cucumbers and tomatoes and stuff. But then when you come to autumn, it's your root vegetables, your berries, that kind of thing. And I think it almost makes your diet more varied as well. Because you're eating in season and you're getting more of the different taste of different seasons. But obviously, when you get to that end of the point of the season, you want to move on to something else because you're fed up of Swede at this point.
Yeah,
Swede
yeah.
is kind of thing.
For sure. I
I think
remember, Dan, when I lived in Canada, because Canada, Vancouver Island, where I lived, was so cold. It's like people would spend the spring and summer collecting whatever was in season, and then they would do a lot of preserves and pickling and smoked salmon, because they would, you know, go fishing. And then everybody that I knew had a smokehouse in their backyard, and they would make the smoked salmon, and everybody had a big freezer, so they would fill that freezer up for the spring and the summer. And then in autumn and winter, when it started getting cold and there was often big snow dumps and you couldn't leave, you couldn't even go to school because you just couldn't get through.
yes.
You know, yeah. You could stay home and you had this whole pantry. Everybody had a pantry or a shed out the back where they had all these, you know, jars of stuff, jams, and, you know, and we had on our property, we had a small half an acre where my mum and dad and my brother and I lived. And, you know, we had like a cherry tree, we had a pear tree, we had mum had a huge garden. It's probably the size of 3 or 4 cars, you know, like all lined up. So, you know, if you were hungry, mum would say, just go out and get something out of the garden. So you'd pull up a carrot, or you'd pull up, you know, whatever that she had planted that was in season. And I will never forget that growing up. I think that's what's made me now go to markets to seek out the foods that remind me of my childhood, that I know were good for me. And then, you know, I went on to processed foods, of course, like all teenagers do. And then I've come back full circle to going, no, I'm not eating that rubbish anymore, and I'll eat the good stuff again. But this is when you work on your self-love and you start looking at what you're doing to yourself, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, you can't avoid the topic of food. You cannot. And yeah, I'm glad that you've brought this to our attention. And you actually suggested this to me. How about we talk about this? And I thought, oh, that's a good idea. We haven't talked about this before. And this is a massive, massive thing that runs the engine of who we are.
It really does, because we are absorbing that energy from that food, aren't we, all the time? And I think when you're talking about growing food, there was a section in the book about how the numbers of different species of plants or the different seeds that they use apparently in the world to mass produce all the food is only about 3 or 4 different seeds that produce the whole of all the food in the world. But when you sort of eat wild food, you'll often get more sort of variation in the seeds and the food, and different nutrients, therefore, in different plants that have grown in different environments. And obviously, in when our ancestors were around, they would eat between sort of 100 and 300 different types of species of plants every year, because of the mass variation, even at a local level, of different seeds and different plants. Whereas now we've got the same plants from the same seeds, and we've got things like genetically engineered food as well, which is like where they have like seedless grapes, for example, and they sort of engineer them so they don't produce seeds and that kind of thing. We're also absorbing all that genetically modified crap, if you like, into our body. So it doesn't go away just because it's in, even if it's not on the plant, it's in the soil. So then you've got to be careful where you get, like we were saying, going to the markets, going to organic places. Make sure we're not absorbing that energy, really.
Yeah. I think those little organic markets, you know, there's so many. I know when I'm in Sydney, I go to one there. When I'm in London, I've got one that I can walk to. And it's like, there's so many little markets on weekends where people come and, you know, they grow all sorts of different things. And I will put the link down below to a Netflix called Fantastic Fungi. And that's all about the amazing properties of mushrooms, different types of mushrooms, and even using mushrooms to clean up oil spills in the ocean. I mean, that documentary is amazing. I'll put that one down below too.
But interesting.
Yeah, just the amazing qualities that food has to do, not just nourishing the body, but it has the ability to do things like this as well, you know?
Yeah,
So
it's often it's the cause, isn't it, of a lot of ailments, they reckon. Lots of allergies, lots of long-term conditions in the body can be
yeah,
traced to not eating the right foods and not taking, you know, the right decisions and not eating
yeah,
consciously. It's probably
yeah,
the phrase.
yeah, for sure.
And it's how you how you reverse that, because
Mm,
do you pop a pill from the doctor to deal with the problem, or do you look at the cause and say, you know, because I've read stories of people that have, you know, been very, you know, almost have been terminally ill, and, you know, and they've looked at the diet and they've gone back to the diet and changed the diet at that point, and they've actually managed to cure themselves through eating really nutritious organic food. Not
yeah,
obviously everybody, but, you know, if you go back to the root cause of the problem, you can sometimes heal the
yeah,
person.
definitely. And you can cure, like you're saying, a lot of, you know, cancers and different, all sorts of different illnesses if you bring it right back to the foundation and the base root of diet. That alone can correct so many things. I mean, I know, you know, when I had a fibroid, when I had a tumor, when I had glandular fever, even, you know, I pushed my body too hard, usually because I didn't have enough money and I was trying to work to pay off debts, and then my health was taking a hit. And then I would often go to work when I was sick, because if I didn't work, I didn't get paid, and I couldn't afford not to go to work, and I just felt resentful. And it was like all of that really taxed my body.
Yeah.
And then you know, you're living off processed foods because you're in your 20s or whatever, and you don't care. And all of that, yeah, just accumulates, and it you do damage, and eventually you hit the wall, and
Yeah.
then you got to learn something different, you know, because what you've been doing is not working. And I mean, I find today, because I've had these things I've just mentioned, I find what I eat is probably more important to me than my job, than the money I have, than anything I do. My main thing during the week is sourcing really good food and then making and preparing and spending time making that food.
I've
That's
seen
my
some
priority. Of course, exercise to support that. But
yeah,
yeah.
I've seen the evidence of those dishes. They look very nice. I
Yes,
think
for the viewers, Dan and I often send each other videos of stuff that we're cooking when it's on the stove and
yeah,
share
probably not.
recipes.
Yeah, the Haynes concoctions. Yeah, Haynes
Yes.
concoctions, I should say. What you were
Yeah.
saying about processed food, what I think is a good idea, and what I try to do, is, if I know I'm not going to have time in the week as well, is try to batch cook as well. I know you'd sort of mentioned this.
Yeah.
I think that's one way we can get around the processed food go-to, if we can, is to try and make like something and freeze it. That's what I
Yep.
try to do anyway. So you've got all those good foods, and you've got something you can rustle together in 10 minutes if you're, you know, if you're late home
Yes.
from. So
Yeah.
it's almost like trying to fit into the lifestyle to the degree that we
Yeah.
are stuck with, but it's how we kind of work around that to the best of to our best interests, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Kind of what I try to do anyway. I try to make a load of stuff and freeze it, and
For sure. For sure.
know what I put into it, made it myself, you know,
Yeah.
what's in there. And I think that's key as well, isn't it, really?
It is. But I find even simple things like, oh, I've got like veggies in the fridge, and I've got, you know, some capsicums or sweet potato or whatever sitting in the bowl on the, and I can see that they need to be used, and I think, okay, let's just make a big soup. Now, if it's winter, you make a hot soup. If it's summer, you can make a gazpacho, and you're
Oh,
using all those vegetables. And then you like you say, you make a big batch and you freeze it. Then you have one batch for today, and then you go, you know what, I don't want to eat that again this week, but I'll eat that in a couple of weeks. And then you just pull it out of the freezer on a Sunday morning, and then you've got that for Monday when you come back from work, if you work out or whatever. And it's using, how do I pack in a lot of vegetables? How do I pack in a lot of fruit? How do I pack in just, you know, water into my diet? You know, how do I do that? And, you know, it's those simple things, lime and soda, or and you put some grated lime into that. That makes a really nice, refreshing drink. So you're not grabbing a Coke, or you're not grabbing a Red Bull or whatever. And it's making habit changes that simple, like really simple things.
Yeah, and I think your taste as well. I think your tastes. I think because we brought up on processed food a lot of the time, our tastes for things and different tastes often kind of muted is probably not the right word, but reduced.
So subdued, yeah.
That's even better. So we don't have those kind of subtle tastes, or we can't taste those subtle tastes until we go right back to basics. We cut the sugar out, we cut the salt and the other flavourings out, the artificial stuff. And then we start eating and really concentrating on what we're eating, concentrating on the flavours, the different textures. And then you almost like your body almost becomes more in touch with the food in that way as well, in the sense that we are tasting it better and we're really savouring each of the taste of it. Whereas before, if it's kind of a processed food, it's all we taste is sugar, but we don't realise that because we're so used to it, kind of thing. Yeah.
I love, you know, because when I come back from the markets every Sunday, I send you a video of what I've bought, you know, do a little video. I send one to my mum too, because she's really obsessed with produce and good food. And you know, when I'm starting to use the produce, because I often think, okay, I'm going to make something today because I've got all this stuff here. I'm going to make, you know, I get excited. But it's like, you know, I pick up the apple and I go, oh, thank you for being here. And, you know, I'm so grateful that you're giving us this lovely, you know, taste, and I'm going to make an apple tart with you today. And it's like I talk to the apples and I talk to the carrots, and, you know, like I give them thanks for what they are giving to us.
Well, they absorb that energy, of course, and then you ingest it. So that's, you know, that's the kind of what I was talking about before.
Yeah, definitely. It's really, it's nice to have a relationship with the food. You have a relationship with the food. It's got energy in it. It's alive. It has a conscience, you know. They have plant intelligence. Like we have human intelligence, they have plant intelligence. So it's making more of an effort, not just, oh, let me just chop this up while I'm watching, you know, the little TV screen and listening to this while I'm cooking. I try when I cook, I cook in silence, or I just have some nice music in the background and I'm present. Like you said, you doing Reiki and connecting with food, it's giving the respect it deserves while you're in the presence of it. It is another living thing. And honestly, it makes food taste so good when you put love into it.
Yeah, it really does make a difference. It's almost like mindful eating, isn't it? It's mindful preparation and it's mindful eating. Because one of the chapters in the book talks about water. This is quite interesting. She suggests, Rachel, to drink wild water as much as you can. Obviously, you've got to be careful where you drink it from. And filter it. But she says wild water is often, because it's moving, all the molecules and the constitution of the water is more natural. When it's been processed through a plant and it's had chemicals added to it and all that kind of thing, it almost loses its structure, and you know, it's not as good for you. It's a lower vibrational water. So it's kind of where you get your water from. And she suggests sort of almost like drawing figure eights in your water, almost making it have that movement in it, because it's the spiraling of the water apparently which produces the higher vibration of the water.
Okay.
I've heard of that before. Concept.
My partner his family lives 2 hours out of London, and they often go with these big, 2 to 4 liter containers, and they go to the source and they fill it up. And then they bring that home. And I thought, I've said to him, can you bring us some back when you next go there? Because you know, even to wash your hair, like I find in London, my hair just goes really limp from the lime. It's too much lime, and you end up with lime scale all over your shower. It's just they put this stuff in there. And I think, I don't want that in my intestines. I don't want that in my pipes. So drinking live water from the source, I totally agree. I think that's definitely got to be good for your self-love and for your pipes.
We went to, we're quite fortunate. I live near Buxton here, which is obviously they've got the Buxton spring water. So I've been a few times and had some of the Buxton mineral water, and it's straight out of the rock, and it's absolutely, you know, it's lovely. You definitely taste the difference. But went to Glastonbury, a place called Glastonbury, not back in the summer, and they had a well there, Glastonbury well, where you can drink the water straight from the well, and that's a similar kind of thing. And you do feel the energy. I don't know if it's placebo effect, but you do feel the energy of it. Well, I certainly did. I felt the purification, you know, the purifying elements of it, and I did feel really invigorated afterwards. And it's so cold, this water. Literally, you can paddle in it as well. My feet were absolutely freezing, but it was almost kind of reset my back, you know, reset my body really.
Wow.
Water, of course, is it's the transmitter, isn't it? It transmits all these nutrients from the food, so it is kind of another aspect of food really. It transmits all those nutrients around the body. And it obviously, again, water, there's been experiments with water, hasn't there, where I think a guy called Emo did some experiments on water, and sort of like he put his intention into the water before it froze, and it made these patterns. If it's, you know, if you put loving intentions into the water, it had these really amazing symmetrical patterns. But I think he did the same experiment, putting like negative emotions, and all these sort of structures were all over the place and disheveled. And so I think even water absorbs emotion as well.
And what's interesting, Dan, is when you look at that and you can see the visual effect of what putting a positive, loving vibe onto something, or negative, and then you go, okay, that's interesting. That's just with water. But what am I made of? 75. I am a huge, I can't remember what the percentage is, but we are massive amounts of water. So if you are doing that to yourself, what's going on with you in terms of what it's doing to you, just by looking at that water experiment and knowing that we are water? You know, ask yourself, what's that doing to my insides? And we know it gives us anxiety, it gives us depression, it's not a pattern, it's a feeling. So it's fascinating when you look at all of that. But the good thing is, I mean, and I think this is what this discussion is today, is what can I do on a physical level in terms of my food, where I source my food, how I cook my food, the intention I put into my food, and the water that I drink, to assist me with some of these conditions that I know so many people are suffering from, which is anxiety, depression, insomnia, that all of this can be definitely influenced by making these changes and making a more conscious effort on a daily basis, practice mindfulness, and put that into when you touch things, when you choose things, where you buy things, that you bring home something that's much better for you as a whole person.
I think two things come out of it for me, two very important things. I think the first one is everything is centered around love, isn't it? And what you put out and what you get back. So if you put that energy out to somebody as well, you're affecting them. If you put that negative or that positive energy out, so your field of influence, if you like, is influencing the water, but it's also influencing other people. And they're influencing you. So obviously, it's a bit like what Nikola Tesla said, isn't it? Everything is vibration. So every thought, every feeling, every situation is a different vibration, and it's tapping into the good vibrations, isn't it? And the good energy in as many ways as you can, in as many parts of your life as you can.
Exactly right. So what else did Carol say? Anything else of interest?
I've got a quote here from somebody called David Wolf, which is quite an interesting, with you saying about depression. And it says,
Yeah.
raw plant foods, from herbs to fruits and everything in between, are the single most effective antidote to anxiety, depression, disease, fear, immobility, insomnia, pain, stress, and worry. I think that kind of sums it up, really, doesn't it? In the sense of, with food. Nature, she just talks about getting away from the cities and getting into nature as much as you can, and really getting sort of like even walking without shoes on through the forest thing.
Yeah.
You're always seeing these kind of like, these hippie films, don't you, where they make fun of like hippies, but it's actually quite true in the sense that you get the energy from the forest in your body, and there's that exchange of energy through the feet, of course. I read about Himalayan salt lamps and forests being full of what they call negative ions, which are very good for when you're around technology. A lot of the time, positive ions, you get attached to your body, and it can cause all kinds of problems with headaches and migraines and that kind of thing. But when you go to the forest, you get that the forest absorbs all the bad ions and the bad energy. And of course, it's not just forests; it's mountains as well. And mountains, because they're remote and they get you away from everything.
Definitely. My brother and I were talking. He's in Portugal, and we were talking about tree hugging this week, because he was saying, that getting that really good energy from a tree, and he said, you just got to watch that when you do it. There's no one around, especially when you're in the city. Like when you're out in the middle of nature, maybe not so bad. Just standing in a park in Portugal hugging a tree. But yeah, it makes sense because it's pulling all the energy from the roots, which comes from the earth, and it's like, whew, you attach yourself to that tree. I reckon that's one of the greatest things you can do for anxiety and depression.
I was down in Dorset a few weeks ago. I went to a place called Brownsea Island, which is like a nature reserve, but you can stay there as well, and you can wild camp, which is another thing I love to do. I love to really get back to nature and take my tent and go and sort of stay in a campsite or stay in the woods somewhere. And what we did, one of the nights, it was a lovely starry night, very very clear, and I had to go out and answer a call of nature, which I did. And on the way back, I decided, I'll just try this tree hugging malarkey. And I did, and it was very relaxing, just hugging a tree in the dark with nobody around to see me.
Oh, really? Wow, nice. How long did you do it for?
Probably about 10 minutes, actually. And I just felt, I felt so much calmer afterwards. I really did. I know it's, it really did make me feel more grounded and more earthed, and just generally. And I went back and I slept for like 8 hours after that.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. So, okay, we'll put down in the description for people that would like to go and hug a tree, what experience you have, and to share it with us, to come back and share it with us. Do it for at least 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, or longer if you want. It doesn't really.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And just like listening to the rain when you're in a tent, that's always a nice. The sounds of nature are very soothing as well, because we're often sounded. What Rachel says in the book, are often around the night, around the sounds of cars and people and voices and industrial sounds. But when you get back to nature and you really listen to every single sound, and your senses get heightened, especially when you're on your own in the middle of a forest, in the middle of the night. You do hear everything, but your senses are more attuned, and I think our ancestors would say the same. You're more attuned to the sounds around you. You hear every leaf, you hear every twig snap, and but it might be quite frightening at first, but it is actually quite quite exciting as well, in the sense that you're hearing more and you're noticing more, and just that sense of heightened sense of being alive, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, two of our favorite things, Dan, food and nature. You and I are bookends. We both love that.
Yeah, definitely do.
Yeah, it just brings us so much joy on daily. You and I are connected to these two subjects daily in some way, shape, or form. And,
Yeah,
I think it does, when you are someone who's anxious and your mind's racing around doing these things, it calms you. It brings you into silence, into a peaceful place. It makes you feel relaxed. You're in a letting go state in a much easier way when you attend to these two things. It's such a it's an easier shortcut than going, okay, I've got to work on my mind so that I don't have anxiety and I got to do affirmations. Yes, you can do all that, but if you're still not connecting with nature and you're not drinking water and cooking good food and having a relationship with the food you eat, I think you are making it more difficult for yourself. And I do think that this is an easy thing that people can practice, and it's practical. It's just, you go and look for food and you then come home and you treat it with respect and you look. I mean, I was 40 something when I started cooking. I hated recipes. I hated cooking. It just used to bore me because my mum was really into it. And over the years, as I work on my self-love, this has become something that now I understand why she's doing what she's doing. And, I share recipes with her, and now I've said to her, now I get it. And she starts laughing because she understood it from when she had me at 18 and we were in Canada and we had a garden by the age, she was 20 and I was 2. She understood this from a very young age. And it took me till 40 to really get it. So I'm grateful that all the years she did this, even though I wasn't into it, I can now look back and remember the stuff she said, the things she did. And now I can put it into practice. So I'm grateful to her for that.
Well, definitely. I think as well, because you're in nature, because you're going out and buying these foods, straight away you're in a state of appreciation and gratitude, aren't you? So at your very inner being, you're in that state of gratitude. And I think that is, like you were saying, simple way to then start to remedy the other stuff in your life, which might not be going as well, but is more complicated. So if you get the simple things right and you're grateful for the simple things, such as nice food and fresh food and a walk in the forest or up a mountain, your mind and body is then, or your consciousness is in a state of gratitude. It's in a higher vibrational position, if you like.
Yeah.
So then helps all your law of attraction stuff and your Neville stuff, because you're in that kind of mindset of thinking, well, I'm giving out that energy of appreciation and gratitude, which then brings more and more back to you. So you find more things to be grateful for so it is like a vicious cycle, not a vicious cycle, but a positive cycle of self endorsement, really.
Yeah, that's it.
So
Good discussion.
Yeah, I've enjoyed this one. I enjoyed all of them, really, and I've enjoyed it. It's been really good.
Yeah, no, this is good. I think
I'm still reading the book.
Still reading the book. Okay, well, maybe we can go, once you find some more stuff, we can do a part 2, because I think this is really important. Like you said, this supports all the LOA, all the manifesting, all the Neville stuff. It's laying the good foundation of who you are and then what vibrates out from you, because you've attended to the physical level with what the body needs. And that's really important.
You've gone right back to the core of your being, really, haven't you? And your connection with things around you. And you're getting that right. If you're getting that bit right, you can then build up and up kind of thing.
Exactly. So I'm heading out now to go to my market and get my organic veggies, and I have to get the Portuguese tarts as well.
They look delicious. They did when you showed me. Really nice. But
yeah, I have to get at least 3 or 4 every Sunday, because they're just so well made and organic ingredients. So love that.
I'm on I've got 2 bags of red lentils, a shallot, and some spices to use up. So might be
Yeah.
making a tagine later or something.
Oh, yum, yum,
Curry or
yum.
something.
I'm sure we'll be sending each other videos later on this afternoon.
Probably, yeah.
As we do. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Dan. Thank you for all that lovely information and a great discussion. And I will put the links to what we talked about down below. Do you want to say goodbye, everyone?
Yeah, goodbye to everybody, and I hope you enjoyed the chat. And I will probably be doing another one at some point once I've read a little bit more of this book.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm getting so much out of it. So I'd love to share some more when I've got some more to share. That'd be great.
Wonderful. Thank you to Carol too for writing the book, and everyone, I hope you got something out of it, and I will see you as always on YouTube with another discussion with someone or on my own. So I will see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.